Thank you so much for being on the Listening Bea today. I'm so grateful that I get this opportunity to talk to you, and I'm very excited to see where this goes.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so my first question is for like someone who doesn't know anything about hypnosis or what it can do, what is it and how can it change people's lives?
It can make you bark like a dog, quack like a duck, and totally believe that you're a ballerina who can run across the stage. No. I mean, I suppose if you wanted it to, it could. It's really just a way of being able to focus, to kind of choose your focus to be inside. So if you think about a time where you stubbed your toe, you're very aware of that discomfort, right? Like and you even know it's coming. You hit it and you have a second to go, oh, that's gonna hurt, right? Embrace yourself. You're actually allowing your mind to focus on the pain signal because your body's trying to say, wait a second, this could be bad, something could be broken, we could be injured. So your mind is diverting attention from whatever it is you were doing, running across the room, to, oh God, we gotta stop here and pay attention to our toe, right? In normal day-to-day experiences, we're doing that all the time, but it's milder, so we don't see it, right? We're not walking around, thank God, stubbing our toe every 10 seconds. We're experiencing a daydream, a distraction, being in the zone, really enjoying what we're doing, losing track of time. Those are all chosen states of inward focus. That's really all this is. So it's helping a client learn how to be able to not get into, but choose to actually focus that way versus just allowing their mind to do it. So that's what hypnosis is. And it accesses the part of the mind that really creates and causes our reactions and responses to our entire reality. So it's it seems like a simple thing because we do it all the time, but when you're actually working in it, it's incredibly profound.
Yeah, that's amazing. It baffles me how like little people know about this, but it's because of the whole history and how it's been suppressed and what people have like ideas of what it comes from with the stage hypnosis people. But since we're always like it seems like it's a pretty common state to get into that focus kind of trance state people call it. And I'm curious, like with social media and if people are scrolling and like listening to things around them, are we always impacted subconsciously by like what people say around us or by what we watch on social media?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how it couldn't be, right? Because our reactions and our responses are dictated by that part of our mind. So, how we're perceiving something that we're scrolling through on social media or hearing on the news or hearing in a room that we're in, it is all impacted by our subconscious. So, it's telling us what we're thinking and feeling in regards to it. So, yeah, I mean, I had heard a statistic once that 95% of our daily existence is run through that part of the mind. And I don't doubt it for 1 second, because even just the conversation you and I are having, I saw my face blip, so I knew my internet died, and I'm trying not to focus on that and worry that my connection's going to go out. Right. But so your mind is taking in all these different things that are happening around you. And while, I might not be paying attention to something happening outside the window in my peripheral, I'm aware of it and I'm processing it. So I might not be
Yeah.
thinking of it. It's similar to like right now, how your legs feel against the chair you're sitting on. Your mind is aware of it, but you weren't consciously thinking about it. Or the temperature of your left toe. Your mind is aware of it, it's recording it, it's taking it in, but you're not consciously thinking of it until it's pointed out. So I think it's always present. And I think it absolutely shapes and forms your entire, what you're taking in and what you're putting out, and just kind of how you're digesting everything that you're going through and seeing every day.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So technically, we you could say that we're being brainwashed by everything that we see throughout the day.
Yeah, I suppose you could say that, right? Because a lot of it, I mean, it really depends on if it falls within your belief systems. So if
Ah,
there's something that's happening around you that you're not really paying attention to, but it validates a current belief system that you hold, then it just kind of helps to make that belief system a little bit stronger. If it's something that is anti your belief system, it actually gets your attention a little faster because your mind sees it more of a, oh, this is an attack on me or something along those lines versus, oh, this goes with what I believe, so I'm just going to let it happen. Right. So, yeah, I guess if you want to look at it as brainwashing to get deeper into a belief system, probably because your mind is willing to accept it more readily.
yeah, that makes sense. And how can we use that in a good way? Because I know that a lot of us we have negative belief systems, like oh I can't do this, I can never be this good or do this thing. And then things that come into our life, they're colored by our lens, our perception of it, and then it just reinforces that. But how can we like flip it so that we make our belief systems better in a good way?
Well, I would tell you regression, but we don't have enough time to go into that. So on a regular day-to-day basis, one of the I shouldn't say easiest, because reframing and flipping belief systems is a big challenge. But I think in at the very ground level, just becoming aware of the fact that it's happening. So if you identify, if you catch yourself saying, oh, I'm not good enough for this, I'm never going to succeed at it, catching yourself and then allowing yourself to have a second where, even if you, and this is where I think the really fun part of it all comes in, and the practicality of it, you don't have to believe anything you're telling yourself. So if I say, I don't believe that I'm good enough, and I catch myself saying it, I can say, you know what, I am good enough. And I don't have to believe it. What I'm doing is I'm actually providing an opportunity for the mind to create a new pathway. Doesn't necessarily mean that, like in that moment, oh, new pathway, I'm now not going to believe that I'm not good enough. What you're doing is you're allowing space and the acceptance through consistent use that this could potentially be my new route. So the analogy, and I don't think I've used it with you before, is if you think about, so for instance, where we live, we have a pathway in our woods, and we could walk that pathway 1,000 times a day. And after a period of time, that pathway gets worn down. The grass stops growing there. The trees kind of stop encroaching on it, right? And it just becomes the easier path to walk. But if you find a different pathway that you want to walk, maybe one that's prettier, leads you to a different location, and you start walking that pathway 1,000 times, multiple times a day, that pathway is going to get just as worn down, right? You saw this pathway, you created this pathway, then you continue using that pathway, and then that pathway actually becomes the easier one to walk, because the old one that you're not using anymore kind of becomes overgrown and unmaintained. So it's very similar to when you have a belief of I'm not good enough, and then you can find a way to catch yourself as consistently as possible. It doesn't have to happen every time. But if you say, oh, I'm not good enough, and you can catch yourself saying I'm not good enough, and then say, you know what, I am good enough. And you can allow yourself to have a moment to sort of imagine what that might even feel like. The more emotions you can put into that experience, the better, because the more familiar you make your mind with it, the easier the mind's going to have to accept that it actually might be something potential, something possible. So it won't see that new pathway as a threat. It'll see it as like, okay, well, this is another opportunity or another option. And then when you use that new pathway more and more and more, the mind just starts more easily going to it. So that's one way that you could do it without doing something intense like, neurolinguistic programming or regression, where you just work to try to catch yourself when you find that thought coming up and saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to just sit here for a second and remind myself about a time where I felt like I actually was good enough, or I felt like I was appreciated, or whatever it is that you would put into that place, right? What would feel good in that moment? What would justify being good enough? And just let yourself sit with that, even if it's only for 10 or 15 seconds. The mind is so focused on emotion that it's not thinking about fact. So if in your mind you're justifying not being good enough with a fact, which isn't a fact, but with a fact, right? Oh, I'm not good enough because I haven't succeeded at this the 10 times that I've tried. So obviously it's a fact. If you have emotion that you can put in place of that, where you could say in the past that you have been good enough, the mind will actually start to adapt that easier because it senses the emotion. So there's no memory that we have that is not associated with an emotion, at least one that's easy enough to bring up. So the more we can associate emotion with that positive outcome we're looking for, the easier it's going to be for the mind to make that trip. So.
Wow, that's amazing. And that makes me think about how people talk about affirmations and doing things like that. But I think that what most people miss is, like, they have a card that I am good enough, and they just read it and it gets boring and they're like, nah, but they don't assign the emotion to it. Yeah. I think that that's the biggest, that's so important that we think about, because our mammalian brain, that's how it communicates, and it communicates in emotions and images and things like that.
Yes.
And fascinating.
Yep. And it's always going to look for emotion first. So it's going to validate everything that you're experiencing through your emotion. And if your emotion doesn't match, then it's not going to accept it. So if you have an emotion about, maybe you're really mad that you succeeded at something, the brain's going to go, wait a second. It doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? Right? So it's going to kind of question it, but not through fact. It's going to question it through past experience. So if our past experience is a little skewed, or our perceptions of certain situations is a little skewed, that could make the moment that the brain's trying to figure things out sort of go, what is happening here? This doesn't make any sense, because it doesn't have anything to base it on. So, it starts developing its own theories. It has to always fill in those holes. It doesn't like to have any open ends. So the mind is always trying to fill things in. And sometimes what it fills it in with is not accurate. So
Yeah. Is that why, like, whenever we're in a bad mood, we always see, like, all the bad with the world, and then we go into, like, a downward spiral?
yep. I
Okay, makes
just had
sense.
the term for it in my head. There's a psychology term where when you see one thing, you start seeing it everywhere, similar to
Yeah.
that. But it's more through patterns. So our minds are predictive pattern machines. It is constantly looking for pattern prediction because that's what's kept us, a human species, alive this long. So it's always looking for that pattern and the ability to predict. And if something falls outside of that, it's going to say, whoa, 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 this is not safe. So and it'll back up. And so you'll often see people, they can accept things more clearly if it falls within an area that they're already familiar or at least have past experience with, versus something that you've never been subjected to or never had any beliefs about one way or the other is a little difficult to digest because your brain's going back through and trying to find, where have I experienced this? Where have I developed a pattern? Where is this familiar? To try to identify like where it can put it, right? Where it can sort it out and what file it can put it in, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. How are you able to break out of your belief system that's so strong whenever something new like that happens?
So trying to think about how to word that. It's more of a, how do I learn to accept that there could potentially be other beliefs that might be acceptable? And a lot of that kind of comes down to, you know how they say, don't try to change everything at one time because it's just too much,
Mhm.
right? The mind doesn't like change. So with belief systems, it's similar. We want to try to, if we're not doing something huge in a session where we can create a belief reframe within an hour to hour and a half, right, with different techniques, if we're doing something on a day-to-day basis, it needs to be something small, something digestible that seems acceptable. So if you have, let's say somebody comes to you with the idea of a religion that maybe you don't know a whole lot about, but you're really steadfast in the one that you yourself have. It's not necessarily that you condemn or condone their religion. You're indifferent because you don't really know anything about it. So you can allow yourself to do a little bit of research every day. And if it's something that you really do truly want to remember or know, being able to associate some kind of an emotion with it is helpful. So as you're reading through it, you could think about different passages, maybe in that religion, that remind you of your own in a positive or connecting, spiritual grounding sort of way. It'll allow you to remember and kind of pull in that information in a more digestible and acceptable way.
Oh, that's interesting. So with like memory and retaining information, like if I'm a student right now and I'm studying, so if I'm trying to memorize this word, attaching an emotion or an image to it can help me remember it better.
Yes. Yep. Same with rhythm and music. So, like when our boys were little, our youngest really struggled with math. I told him, I said, you can thank me for that for the rest of your life because I've always been the same way. But we used to try to put a rhythm to like when they were learning math problems because there's something very deep about a connection with rhythm and with different types of like melodies. So if we can find a catchy melody, to be able to put like times tables to. But with adults, we're gonna kind of feel silly sitting here going 5 times 5. Like you're just gonna feel like a fool, right? It's not something you're gonna do when you're counting change at the grocery store. So being able to have a way to get it to sit into your mind easier, doing it through associating emotion or imagery can be very helpful because your mind can pull it up a little easier.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. I have never learned that before, so I'm definitely going to try that out with all the things I'm studying for.
Yeah.
That's cool. And then if we go back to like how our lens or how we're feeling our emotions color our perception of the world around us, and we're in one of those downward spirals, so we're picking out all the negative things. What's the easiest way is to catch like your thought pattern and then flip it like that?
That's one of the easiest ways. The other easy way is through coping strategies. So there are, you can even like AI, you can go online to AI and just type in like, what are some really great coping strategies for moments of anxiety or moments of panic, right? So you can
Yeah.
get tons and tons and tons of them, but anything that's going to disrupt the pattern. So what's happening in those moments is there's a loop going on in your brain. So part of your brain is saying, we need to be calm. This is fine. It's not a big deal. Everything's good. And even another part of your brain is going, oh my God, the world's going to end. This is Armageddon for sure. World War III is happening. Everything's going to fall off from underneath us and we're going to die. So you have this like kind of back and forth loop going, and you're trying to reason with yourself, but the part of you that's trying to be logical and reasoning is not going to override the part of you that is going, this is World War III, we're all going to die, quick, run away. That part of you can't overpower that by thought. So the easiest, fastest way to be able to get in there is to just find something that can interrupt it. So something simple, like if you're home and your mind starts spiraling out of control, or you're thinking about something really negative and you're trying to really get yourself out of it, run your wrists under cold water. it helps. So you're looking at the vagus nerve with a lot of these. There's a vagus nerve reset. So it kind of gets like stuck in this loop, and the nerve is impacted by it. So it kind of instigates this fight or flight. And even though, thinking of something negative, like, oh, I saw something on social media that I don't agree with, logically, you're sitting here saying, okay, I'm not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. But your brain, that mammalian part of our brain, is going, oh my God, saber-toothed tiger, we got to run, right? So there's a reaction that's happening within your brain that is causing you to kind of go into this fight or flight. Now, we might see it as anger or frustration because, man, that guy is such a jerk because he believes in something different than I do for politics, and what a fool. But what's happening is your brain is going, oh boy, this is bad. We got to panic. We got to freak out. So you start seeing more negative. You start seeing more stressful situations. Now your cortisol levels are up and your adrenal system's being taxed and tapped and all kinds of different things. So having coping strategies in a moment where you're really in it, especially when you're super stressed or really angry about something, being able to say, okay, for a second, I'm just going to do this coping strategy for a second. And you can even tell yourself, I don't think it's going to work, but I'm just going to do it anyway because Cari said that it'll help. So you don't have to believe it's going to work. You don't have to want to do it. But if you do it and you give yourself a second, you'll actually start to see that loop start to slow down because you've now actually cut the loop. You've interrupted that loop. So it's easier for the mind to kind of divert itself. So if you do something like breathing techniques, put your hands under cold water, go outside and get a breath of fresh air, spin around in a circle. Sounds totally crazy. We do it with our horses. When our horses are starting to act out and not in the way that we need them to, we just grab them by the halter and lead them around in a tight circle. They get disoriented and then they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm supposed to be listening right now. And they lose focus on what they were trying to do. So that's exactly what we're trying to do with the mind. We're sort of grabbing the harness and spinning it around in circles and saying, wait, pay attention. This is not happening. We're not doing this anymore. And there's tons and tons of different kinds of coping strategies out there, but being able to even just go into it to say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, but this is coping strategy stupid, but I'm going to do it anyway, just to see if it works. Have at it and see what happens. You'll actually start to see the more consistently you are with it, the easier the brain's going to adapt to doing it. Because it is going to feel better than sitting here spinning out and totally freaking out about something that, logically afterwards, when you look at it, you think, oh my God, I'm a lunatic. But it's not, because in the moment when things are super negative or when you're really spiraling, everything seems logical. It seems completely and totally, whatever it is that you're thinking is going to happen, for sure is going to happen. But once you get into give yourself an opportunity to really sit and do those coping techniques and learn how to do them consistently enough, find 2 or 3 that really work for you, you'll start to see that the mind backs off a little bit. That panic, that freak out isn't quite as extreme. And you actually can start to feel in control. And when you start to feel in control, you can be a little bit more calm. So.
Wow. Okay, so coping strategies are number 1 when your brain's like all conjumbled and everything.
Yes. Yep. They're also called loop interrupters. Or pattern interrupters, because it's a pattern, it's a loop. So that's kind of, however you want to Google it, but those are the terms that I would use to look for them. And you'll find tons of them online.
Okay. Very interesting. And you've done like all this, your practice since 2009, if I'm not mistaken?
6-ish.
2006. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, more me around 8.
Yeah. So with all those years and all the experience you've had, what would you say is like your top piece of advice for someone who is probably new to hypnosis and doesn't know anything and wants to like quickly switch the flip in their brain and start becoming their best self, and maybe doesn't want to eat that cookie even though they have that strong inclination to eat it? Like, what's your big piece of advice?
I would say don't look at hypnotherapy as hypnotherapy. Look at it as an opportunity to kind of gain some insights on your perceptions, because all we have in life that we really truly ultimately have control over are our perceptions. And that's what you're learning how to work through and shift and adjust with this tool. So it's not, I wouldn't look at hypnotherapy as hypnotherapy. Yes, that's the term for it. Yes, that's what it's written about in books. And yes, that's how scientists study it, because they have to know how it's defined. But when we do the work, when you actually are doing the work, it's perception work. That's really what it is. We're looking at trying to decipher, how are you perceiving the situation? How would you rather perceive the situation? Because when you're perceiving it the way you want to, the outcome is what you're looking for. When you're trapped perceiving it the way that your past has created for you, then your outcome is not what you're wanting. And that's why you're sitting in my office. So really the biggest piece of advice that I would have would be to consider the realm of possibilities when it comes down to your perceptions of situations. And it's everything from, a relationship to how you perform at work to the way that a cherry popsicle tastes. So it's everything, and it's all been constructed throughout life. The frustrating part is that it was kind of started when we were really little, and our knowledge when we were really little wasn't very extensive. So we're kind of stuck sitting here with perceptions built by a 4 or 5-year-old, and I'm 45. Those don't really work for me anymore. So, I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice, is to just try to look at perception, the idea of perception. What in your life are you perceiving in a way that is not allowing you to be who or what you want to be? And then figure out, ways that we can work backwards from there. And that's really what I would say the work is, because a lot of it can be done with your eyes open, sitting here having a conversation. Some of it could be done if you want to imagine walking on a beach. It's really up to the client, and how they choose to experience a session.
Wow. And how are our perceptions created by our 4 or 5-year-old brain?
Oh boy. How do I sum that up in a not an hour-long lecture?
Take your time.
So we're born with a need for acceptance, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to be accepted. We don't even know we have it, right? When you're a newborn, that's not something you think about. So we have to be accepted, because in order to survive throughout humanity, we had to be accepted. We couldn't live by ourselves as a caveman. We wouldn't have survived. So we had to be accepted by others in order to be able to survive. Well, that survival mode is still very much there, and it never really goes away. No matter how much self-work you do, unless you're somebody like Gandhi, you have to be accepted. So as we're working through these different, if you believe in past lives and lifetimes, as you're working through these different lifetimes and learning different lessons, you're gaining more knowledge. Well, when we are born and we're sitting here and we're saying, okay, I have to survive, everything that we're perceiving within our experience, based on what we're seeing, feeling, hearing, thinking, that's going to shape our perception. So when you're 3 or let's say you're 5 and you're going into kindergarten, your mind is just starting to wrap around the idea that the world is a little bit bigger than you. Because up until you went to school, up until about the age of 5, the world revolves around you, because it's supposed to. Mom and dad are supposed to be, focused only on you and your siblings maybe, but the world is all around you. That's just how we develop. It's not a selfish personality. It's just how we develop as humans. So when you start getting exposed to other things and going out into the world, like to kindergarten, you're starting to realize that there's more people here than just you, and that there's implications for ways that you act, and there's consequences, and there's different things that happen in different people that you have to be, accountable to. And it'll get to a point where when you're, sitting in class and the teacher says, point out these shapes, and calls on you and asks you, and says, B, stand up for a second and tell me, is this a square or a triangle? Well, if you think it's a square because of maybe homework you did last night, but you say triangle because you're not really confident in yourself, when the teacher comes forward and says, no, that wasn't right, go ahead and sit down. In that moment, she might not have been mean. She really was just trying to move on to the next student and the next lesson. So she called somebody else. In your mind, that could have been viewed as complete and total rejection. So as you grow up, you're less and less apt through different experiences to maybe put yourself out there and volunteer to stand up or volunteer to speak what you think, for fear that you could be rejected, right? Or be made fun of, or anything along those lines. So that develops as a young child. And then any situation that happens subsequently from that, if for a moment you put yourself out there and anybody says anything because you're looking for it, right? Like if you're in work, let's say you're, or in high school, and you put yourself out there just on a whim, you just felt really confident about the answer. And so you do, and somebody makes some kind of a scoffing sound, like, oh, they might have been doing it to somebody else in the room, totally not related to what you're doing, but because you're worried about it, you're looking for it. When you're looking for it, you're going to see it. So if something happens that just further reaffirms what happened to you in kindergarten, well, by the time you're a full-grown adult, there is no way you're going to stick your neck out there and risk rejection, because it is proven to you so many times that that's just what happens. So your perception of situations when you put yourself out there is it's dangerous, right? I won't be accepted. It's dangerous. So there's a Carl Jung theory that because our entire existence is really founded on the need for acceptance, that we try so hard to be everything we think everyone wants us to be. And in the effort to do that, we have such a shattered persona that we don't really know who we are. We are who we think other people want us to be, right? not who we actually want to be ourselves. We don't even really know who that is in a lot of situations. And that's why you hear about people having like midlife crises in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, because now their kids are grown and they're out of the home. So now if you were a parent for the last 20 years, you're sitting here going, well, I identified as a parent. I'm not a parent anymore. Who the hell am I? What do I do? I don't even know what I do anymore. I don't even know what I like, right? If you have done things like that, and then all of a sudden that's not there, you sit here and it's like this whole piece of you is gone. And now you have to try to figure out who you were. Well, you had a life before you were a parent. Who was that person? I don't know. You've been this person for 20 years. So it's a challenge. And it's a lot of that absolutely stems from how we're creating our perceptions as children. And it doesn't mean that we have to have grown up in an abusive home. It could very well be just a situation where, because we're 4 and 5 years old, we misunderstood a situation. And because we misunderstood or misinterpreted something, we walked away with a belief that maybe we weren't good enough, or we didn't try hard enough, or we weren't smart enough, when that was not what was meant at all. But now we're living through that reality. So it can be a challenge.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So everything that we see from our perspective now could be misunderstandings from when we were 4 or 5 years old of what the world was and how it was interacting with us. And with fear of rejection and like our constant need for acceptance, I'm guessing that's what makes the whole herd mentality thing a thing, where we have to follow the herd to be accepted by others. And with this Carl Jung like theory of, we don't really know ourselves because it's fragments of what other people want us to be. How, especially in this world with social media and everything constantly in our face of what we should be, how we should look, how we should act, how can we like reconnect with who we are underneath all of everyone else's expectations of us?
Get off social media. It's like,
yeah, step one.
I know teenagers are not going to listen to that. They'll be like, she's crazy. It's, if you think about the amount of self-value that people get through people they'll never meet, that they've never known, right? They're not getting self-value through themselves and their own accomplishments. They're getting it through likes and reactions and responses to posts. So, if you're being able to take a step back and kind of reconnect with yourself is going to be more, I don't mean it to sound woo-woo or cliche, but a lot of it's going to be more about finding satisfaction within who you are as a person, not based on what other people's opinions are. There's a book by Don Miguel Ruiz called The 4 Agreements. And it's a short book.
Yeah.
I don't have it here in my office, but it's a short book.
Oh, I have that.
Read it. It is so good.
Me too.
It is so good. It's just a short book, but it's basically about, look, these are the 4 requirements we need. If we want to live within peace with ourselves and we want to live in peace with other people, this is what you need to do. And you learn not to take on other people's opinions. You learn not to be able to take them, especially don't take them personally. Be impeccable with your word is another one, where whatever it is that you say you're going to do, you need to do it. You're just not going to see that in a social media or online environment. People are behind a keyboard. They can say what they want to say and walk away. I truly believe that probably 90% of what you see on the internet that people say, they would not say if they were face to face with the person they're saying it to. It's because they have that ability, like keyboard warriors, they call it, where they can say what they want and then they don't have to pay the consequences or see someone be hurt that they said something to. And I think if people were to take a step back and really not base what they see is good about them or not good about them on the opinions of people who they're never going to meet, and instead try more to find it from themselves. What is it that's good about me? What do I like about me? What am I actually good at? What do I enjoy doing? Not having what other people tell you to do. I'd had a client forever ago who had talked about self-care. And she said, I don't do it. And I said, well, why don't you do it? She said, because I just assumed maybe it was because she had a couple of little kids. And she goes, well, I don't really like the spa. I don't really want to have my nails done. And I said, who said you have to go to the spa? I wouldn't want to go to the spa. I don't want people I don't know touching me. So I just said, that's just not my thing either. And she goes, well, but that's what self-care is. I said, no, self-care is self-care. It's not do what everybody says they're doing. It's do what makes you feel good for yourself, right? So I said, if you don't want to go to the spa, don't go to the spa. What feels good? She goes, oh, ride my horse. I said, so go ride your horse. If that's what works for you, like you need something, you need to look at it like, what can I do where I will be so relaxed or so into what I'm doing where I completely lose track of time? If you don't like going to the spa and that's not going to do it for you, then don't go to the spa. So, it's really just kind of about finding within yourself, what makes you happy, what makes you feel connected. And then you can actually kind of start finding that value. What am I good at? What do I enjoy doing? What kind of things make me feel valued, or accomplished or appreciated? And I think you find that a lot more through your own inner work than you're going to getting, 1,000 likes on Instagram. I know some of us have a business that are social media reliant, but for your personal value, that should not be coming from anything outside of you, not even in a close committed relationship. I've been with my husband for 25 years, and yes, I do feel as though I have value in his eyes, but I don't find my own value through him. And that I think it takes life experience and just time to get to that point. But being able to start separating yourself now from the reliance of, at a younger age, from the reliance of being able to say, okay, well, obviously that bathing suit's the one to wear because I had 1,000 likes on that versus the other one that's only 700. No, what one do you feel good in? Screw what everybody else thinks. It really doesn't matter. Yeah. So
I absolutely love that. And that reminded me of, I was just listening to this one, I think it was a YouTube video. It was super long about like Chinese herbal medicine or something like that. And the speaker talked about how, when we find our flow moments or like the things that we really, really enjoy doing, a lot of people have like the pushback of, I'm too busy to do this. I can't do this. But what they don't realize is if they do what makes them and brings them joy and brings them energy, they're going to have a lot more energy to do whatever their busy work was and do it much faster. I think people like miss that. Like, okay, yes, you're spending time doing this, but it'll make you much more efficient and much more productive when you're doing this. What do you think about that?
I think that's great. I think it's brilliant. I do, because there's a certain energy that comes from that you don't get anywhere else. And I think a lot of it, I think a lot of it kind of is like almost this guilt. Like if there's something I enjoy doing, I love teaching class, as if you couldn't tell. I love teaching class. I love being able to like give all the information that I can possibly give. I spent the whole day yesterday and the whole day today working on finishing up editing the new course that's coming out. And I loved every second of it. I love every second of it because it's an opportunity for me to be able to share what I think people should just have an intrinsic knowledge of, like we shouldn't have to be taught this. We should just know this. But a lot of us don't. So when you're caught in that moment where you're doing all these other things, when you enjoy it, oftentimes you'll feel guilty. Oh, I really should be doing this. And I caught myself doing it today. I thought I really need to go and do the laundry. I need to go and do a whole bunch of things at the farm and like all these different things. And I thought, no, this is what I need. I committed to hope that I would have it done to begin with. But in most cases, when you're doing something that you enjoy, you do feel guilty because there are other things I'm supposed to do that are more responsible, right? Or more adult. And okay, yeah, if you're up against a time crunch, if there's something that's expected of you, if you made a promise to somebody else that you have to fulfill, then yes, you need to focus on that. But if you're not sitting here with all of these different demands on you, realistically, can you not give 30 minutes to what you like to do? 30 minutes, right? I would promise that most everyone that is on social media spends at least 30 minutes a day flipping through different social media, areas, apps. So if you've got 30 minutes for that, then you've got 30 minutes to do something that you enjoy doing. And I don't mean doom scrolling and distracting yourself with social media, finding something you connect to that you really enjoy and giving yourself that 30 minutes. So I love that theory. I think that's a great one. And he's right. I mean, think about how energized you are after you're doing something you enjoy doing. You can focus on everything else so much better.
Yeah, you're totally right. And it's so difficult because, again, the herd mentality, everyone is like romanticizing, oh, I'm too busy to do this. I can't do that because I have to do this. And stepping out of that and realizing you're going to have a lot more energy and you're going to be happier and less stressed and everything is amazing and key.
Yeah. The herd mentality, I think you kind of look at it like societal expectations. That's sort of, what we're looking at. And I think the difficulty with that is since COVID, I've seen like there's a huge push for people being able to open their own businesses and become their own bosses. And they have these, like these dreamer mentalities. And I love it. It's amazing. Yeah. But at the same time, it's difficult because you're pulling against the current, right? The current says you go to college, you get a good job, you buy a home, you get married, you have kids. That's societal expectations or the herd mentality, right? So when you're in a situation where that's what you're looking at, but yet you want to open your own store, creating pocketbooks or, your own practice for whatever it is you want to do. You're going to sit here knowing that it's against the flow and, you'll be judged and what do people think? And my parents are going to think I'm a failure or, sometimes I think it's a matter of really, if this is what you're comfortable doing and you're really passionate about what you're doing, there's a reason for it. We're all here for a reason. And if you can find some balance between what you think is expected of you and then what you actually want to do, you can live a little bit more harmoniously with it instead of fighting it the whole time. Because when you're doing something you really want to do and you have that guilt of, oh, I really need to do this, I really need to do that, you're not going to enjoy it as much, and you're going to actually find yourself doing it less because you start getting this negative feeling and this anxiousness when you're doing it. So if you can find a balance between what you think you're expected to do, or what you know you're expected to do, and what you actually want to do, there's less of a angst, I guess, when you're doing it.
Wow. You shared so many like gold nuggets of wisdom. I'm so grateful for everything that you've shared. This is amazing.
Good.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, okay, are you ready for the last question from the previous guest?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I don't know who your previous guest was. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. It was Rob Henderson, and he asked, if your 18-year-old self could see your life now, what would surprise them most?
Well, since I am on a 21 or under channel, I'm going to be very careful and say I would probably be surprised with how responsible and honest I've become, because I was not a good teenager at all. At all. I was the one that your parents told you to stay away from because I just hung out with people that were not good. So I think my 18-year-old self would probably sit here and go, wow, what the hell happened to you? That is, I'm impressed, because if you told me I'd be doing what I'm doing now when I was 18, I would have laughed and walked away. So
wow.
That's probably it.
Yeah. Sounds like your past self is proud in some way, might be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't even know who that person was anymore. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. And thank you again for coming on the Listening Bee. And if people want to learn more about you and your practice, where can they find you?
So I've got a few different sites right now I'm trying to work on. They're not up completely. Neural Path Strategies is my website. They can email me at carrie@neuralpathstrategies.com. You can text me at 860-484-1329 if you have any questions. Again, the website is under construction, so it's not in the greatest of space, but at least it'll give you an idea of who I am and sort of get a little bit of information about what we do.
Yeah, awesome. And they can also find your book on Amazon, right?
Yes, they can. Yes.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you again, and I'm so grateful that I can share this with people.
Absolutely. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.